My brother called me the family's most boring person because I always cried at his pranks. When he mashed gum into my hair, I cried. When he yanked my chair, fracturing my tailbone, I cried for 2 months flat on my stomach. Mom and Dad brushed it off. Boys will be boys, they said. Learn to take a joke. You're cold and unloving as an older sister. So I stopped crying. Even when he piled food onto my plate at dinner, I forced a grateful smile. But he'd mixed in a heavy spoonful of peanut butter. The second I shut my bedroom door, invisible hands crushed my throat. I couldn't breathe. Angry red hives erupted, burning like fire. I collapsed onto my bed, phone glowing in the dark. My Safari history showed one desperate search. Can a peanut allergy kill you? Consciousness faded through the wall. My brother laughed at his video game in the living room. Mom and Dad watched a sitcom. No one cared what I did behind my closed door. No one knew their daughter was dying. In my next life, I don't want to be a cruel joke's punchline. I want to be treated like a human being. Even once Ivy, come out and eat right now. My mother's voice pierced through the wooden door, dripping with irritation. I did not move. It was not because I was giving her the silent treatment. I physically could not move. My body felt like it was filled with wet cement. Every single muscle burned with a terrifying heat. I could feel the skin on my face stretching. My eyes were swollen shut into tiny useless slits. My lips were completely engorged, so thick I could neither open nor close my mouth. My throat felt like someone had shoved burning coals down it. Every attempt to pull in oxygen felt like swallowing razor blades. Ivy, are you deaf? I said.
Dinner is ready.
She yelled again, louder. This time I could hear the sharp edge of anger in her tone. Her patience was already gone. Mom, she is just throwing a fit again. My brother Cole's voice drifted over from the dining table. He sounded entirely relaxed, like he was talking about the weather. I just mixed a little peanut butter into her food. I just wanted to play a prank on her. A prank? He said it so casually. Sneaking peanut butter into the meal of someone with a deadly allergy was exactly the same as putting salt in a sugar bowl. Just a fun little science experiment. Cole, you know your sister is allergic. Why would you do that? My mother's voice carried zero actual blame. It was just a mild, helpless complaint. I just wanted to see what happened. All sounded completely justified. The books make it sound so scary. I bet they were just exaggerating. All right, enough. My mother cut him off. Baby, come out and eat your dinner. Stop being so petty with your brother. I gave no response. I was not being stubborn. My tongue had swollen to twice its size. Entire inside of my mouth was inflamed. I tried to force my jaw open, but all that came out was a pathetic, muffled whimper like a stray cat that had just been hit by a car. Evie, I am warning you.
Do not test my temper today.
My mother's voice turned harsh. If you refuse to eat, you are going to starve. Do not expect us to bring you a plate. Her footsteps retreated from my door. The clinking of silverware against porcelain echoed from the living room. They had started eating, the perfect family of 3. Without me. I lay paralyzed on my bed, staring up at the ceiling. There was a faint water stain right above me, shaped vaguely like a butterfly. I had stared at that stain countless times growing up. Whenever I felt overwhelmed, I would look at it until the tears stopped. But this time, the tears leaked out of my swollen eyes and rolled down my burning cheeks. Breathing was becoming impossible. I could hear the frantic pounding of my own heart. Thump, 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 like someone desperately banging on a door that would never open. My phone slipped from my numb fingers and hit the carpet. I let my eyes fall shut. Whatever. Let it end. Nobody cared anyway. When my soul finally drifted out of my body, my very first thought was strangely calm. So this is what dying feels like. Every ounce of pain and suffocation vanished in a split second. I floated up near the ceiling, looking down at my own body on the bed. The girl lying there had her head twisted at an unnatural angle. Her face was swollen beyond recognition. Her lips had turned a sickening shade of dark purple. Her arms were covered in a horrific rash. The phone lay discarded on the floor, the screen still brightly lit. The search engine was stuck on. The very last thing I tried to read before I died. Emergency first aid for anaphylactic shock. I floated right through my bedroom door. I drifted through the solid wood that nobody had bothered to knock on. In the living room, my mother was sitting on the sofa scrolling through her phone. The coffee table was covered in half-eaten dishes. Roast chicken, a green bean casserole, and a bowl of mashed potatoes. There was a full plate sitting at my usual spot. My mother had not cleared it away. A fork was still resting on the edge of the plate. She had no idea I would never take another bite of food in my life. My father, David, sat beside her watching the evening news. The meteorologist on the screen was predicting heavy rain for tomorrow. Evie is still not coming out, he asked casually, not even taking his eyes off the television. Ignore her. You spoil her. Too much. My mother kept her eyes glued to her screen, her thumbs swiping mindlessly. Cole just played a harmless joke on her. Is she really going to drag this out? Whether she is dragging it out or not, the kid is allergic.
You know that.
My father's tone was completely flat. No panic, no concern. He might as well have been saying the milk was expired. How bad could an allergy really be? It is not like she drank rat poison. My mother frowned in annoyance. She is just dramatic. She has been like this since she was little. The second she does not get her way, she locks herself in her room. Look at Cole. He is such a bright, happy kid. But having her around forces him to walk on eggshells floating nearby. I actually wanted to laugh. Cole walked on eggshells. I certainly did not look nervous. When he used my toothbrush to scrub the toilet bowl, he laughed louder than anyone. When he snuck to the breaker box and cut the hot water, while I was showering in the dead of winter, I was the one living in that house like I was navigating a minefield. He lived like a king who could do whatever he pleased. The only difference was who our parents chose to believe. Fine, I will go check on her. My mother finally put her phone down and stood up from the couch. I drifted behind her as she walked to my bedroom door. She pushed it open just a crack. The room was pitch black. The curtains were drawn tight. I could barely make out a curled-up silhouette on the mattress. Ivy, are you coming out to eat or not? I did not move. I was already dead. All right, stop faking it. Her voice grew even more exasperated. If you're not eating, I am throwing it away. Do not come crying to me that you are hungry at midnight. She waited for 3 seconds. The figure on the bed gave no response. You are absolutely infuriating. She slammed the door shut. Her footsteps marched back down the hall. She left. She did not take 2 steps inside. She did not flip the light switch to look at my face. If she had, she would have seen my deep purple lips. She would have touched my hand and realized it was already turning cold. But she just stood at the threshold 10 feet away, asked out a few annoyed words, and walked away. I hovered in the hallway staring at the closed door. Mom, is she still not coming out? Cole chewed on a chicken wing, his mouth shining with grease. He glanced down the hall toward my room. Who knows with her? She is just throwing a pity party. My mother started clearing the table. She scraped the leftover chicken into the trash. She picked up my untouched plate, stared at it for a second. She hesitated briefly, then scraped it right into the garbage too. Is she seriously mad? Cole's voice held a tiny fraction of guilt, but it vanished instantly. I literally just put a drop of peanut butter in her food. Is she really going to overreact this much? Overact or not? You know,
She has that allergy.
my mother stacked the dirty plates and carried them to the sink.
Just do not do stuff like that again.
That was it.
No punishment.
No lecture, no screaming that he could have killed his sister. Just a casual do not do that again, spoken with the exact same weight as telling him not to leave his dirty socks on the floor. I watched the whole exchange. My chest felt strange, a deep,
Hollow ache.
I was already dead. I had no heartbeat. So, why did it still hurt?
Mom,
Do you think she is actually sick or something? Cole's voice dropped lower. What could possibly be wrong with her? My mother turned on the faucet. The loud rush of water drowned out her words. Your sister has done this her whole life. This slightest inconvenience, and she plays dead. She paused to scrub a plate. Remember when you pulled her chair out? She laid in bed for 2 months claiming she was hurt. And she was perfectly fine. In the end, was she not? My soul drifted into Cole's bedroom. His dual monitors were glowing brightly. A multiplayer shooter game was paused on the screen. He was leaning back in his expensive gaming chair, a lollipop in his mouth. His phone buzzed. A text from his friend.
yo.
How is your sister? Cole typed back quickly. She is fine. Just playing dead for attention like always. Your mom didn't chew you out. My mom knows. She is just a drama queen.
Nice.
We will have to think of a better prank next time. LOL. Yeah. Next time I am going to steal her final project so she fails her class. LMAO. You are a menace. I stared at the glowing chat bubbles. Something shattered deep inside my chest. It was not anger. It was something much colder than anger. It was absolute suffocating despair. The realization that in their eyes I was not even a human being. I was just a toy, a prop for their amusement, something they could break, without ever worrying about the consequences. Because my parents would never punish him. They would always take his side. I turned around and floated out of his room. I did not want to hear his laughter anymore. I did not want to know how else they planned to humiliate me. I was dead. None of this should matter to me anymore. But why did it still sting? Later that night, my mother came back to my door. This time she knocked it. Come out and take your shower. No response. If you do not answer me, I am coming in. Still no response. She pushed the door open. The room was pitch black. She reached her hand in and flipped the light switch. The bright overhead bulb flooded the room. My corpse was still lying exactly where I collapsed. My posture had not shifted an inch since the afternoon. My mother stood in the doorway. She took one look at me and frowned deeply. Are you seriously still putting on this act? She did not step closer. She stood at the doorway. Her arms crossed defensively over her chest. Less than 10 feet away, 10 feet. Her daughter was dead. Her dead child was lying 10 feet away from her. She stared at me for 3 agonizing seconds. And she turned around and walked away. Evie, I am telling you right now. If you do not get up, I am taking your phone tomorrow. Her voice echoed down the hall. She never looked back. She never hesitated. She just walked away. I hovered right above my own bed, looking down at my ruined body. I looked so disfigured, I barely recognized myself. Mom, you did not recognize me either. But that is because you never really looked at me to begin with. Whenever you looked at me, your eyes were always filled with impatience. You always thought I was complaining, whining, faking it. You never once considered the possibility that one day I might actually die, even when I was lying dead right in front of you. You refused to believe it. By 10 o'clock, my father went to take a shower. My mother was back on the couch watching a reality TV show. The television blared with canned laugh tracks.
Haha.
It echoed loudly through the house. Cole was back in his room violently mashing his keyboard. He was in a voice call with his buddies. Dude, that sniper is camping in the back. Revive me. Revive me. I am down.
Ha. Ha. Ha.
We destroyed him. Their laughter seeped through the walls. I floated in the empty hallway listening to the noise. It felt incredibly ironic. In this house, every single person was smiling, and not a single one of them knew that this family was missing a person forever. At 11 o'clock, my mother turned off the TV. She went to brush her teeth. As she walked past my bedroom, she paused heavy. Are you really? She pushed the door open slightly. The lights were still glaringly bright. I was still lying there frozen, in the exact same position. She stood at the threshold and let out a heavy sigh. You are impossible. She reached out and flicked the light off.
Click.
The room plunged back into total darkness. My soul stood in the black void, looking down at my own corpse. I suddenly remembered a true crime article I had read on Reddit a few weeks ago. It discussed how long it took for someone to be discovered if they died alone in their house. In those true crime articles, the numbers were always staggering. Weeks, months, sometimes years. A person could slip out of the world, and the only indicator left behind would be a stack of yellowing newspapers on a porch or a landlord wondering why the automatic rent transfers had suddenly bounced. But I had always assumed that was for the isolated, the lonely, the people who lived on the margins of society with no one to call their name. I didn't think it could happen in a house of 4, with 3 people sleeping just down the hall, their breathing audible through the drywall. The digital clock on my nightstand clicked over to 1 a.m. My body on the bed had begun to settle. The heat that had consumed me during the anaphylaxis was gone, replaced by a dull, waxy chill that seemed to radiate outward. In the dark, the swelling in my face didn't look like skin anymore. It looked like papier-mâché, stiff and grayish-white under the dim moonlight, filtering through the blinds. I sat on the edge of my desk, my translucent knees pulled up to my chin. I felt nothing physically, no pain, no suffocation, no burning. But the emptiness was worse. It was a heavy, hollow drafts of wind sensation that whistled through my chest where my heart used to be. Across the hall, the house went quiet. Cole screaming at his computer finally
Stopped.
The floorboards creaked as he went to the bathroom, pissed with the door open, and then shuffled back to bed. The silence that followed was absolute. At 6:30 a.m., the alarm on my phone went off. It was a cheerful, chiming acoustic guitar track I had set months ago to make waking up for school less miserable. It buzzed against the carpet, vibrating slightly, sending tiny ripples through the dust motes in the air.
Chime. Chime. Chime.
Next door, a door opened. Footsteps marched down the hallway. They stopped. Outside my room, Evie, my mother's voice snapped, accompanied by 3 sharp, impatient raps. On the wood. Turn that damn thing off. Some of us are trying to sleep. I didn't move. I couldn't. On the floor, the phone kept chiming. Evie. Her voice rose, thick with early morning gravel and irritation.
I swear.
To God, if I have to come in there. She rattled the doorknob. It was locked. I had locked it from the inside out of habit, a desperate attempt to keep Cole from sneaking in to steal my things or smear toothpaste on my pillows while I slept. Unbelievable, she muttered. She kicked the bottom of the door once, a dull thud. That shook the frame, and then marched back to her bedroom. 20 minutes later, the alarm finally timed out and went silent. By 7:30 a.m., the house was a flurry of normal activity. The smell of toasted bagels and cheap coffee drifted under my door. I stood by the threshold, my face pressed against the solid wood, listening to the clatter of plates. Is Evie still throwing her tantrum? David's voice was muffled by a mouthful of
Food.
"Don't start," my mother sighed. She locked her door. Her alarm was blaring for 20 minutes. She's probably doing it on purpose just to irritate me because she knows I have a migraine today. She's so childish, Cole chimed in. I could hear the scrape of his chair. She's literally 18 and she acts like a toddler. It's just peanut butter. It's not like I stabbed her. Just leave her, my mother said, her tone flat and decisive. If she wants to starve in there, let her. When she gets hungry enough, she'll come out and apologize to all of us for this ridiculous display. Can I have her share of the bacon then? Cole asked. Go ahead, sweetie. I watched through the wall as Cole reached across the table, his fingers greasy, grabbing the cold strips of meat from the serving platter. He stuffed them into his mouth, his cheeks bulging, a smug, satisfied grin on his face. He looked so young, so healthy, so entirely unburdened by the fact that his sister was a corpse 10 yards away. My father picked up his briefcase. I'm heading out. Don't let her skip her chores today, Sarah. The garage needs sweeping. I won't, my mother promised, already scrubbing a pan at the sink. She's not getting out of her responsibilities just because she's having an attitude. They left. The front door clicked shut. The garage door rumbled open then.
Closed.
Cole went back to his room to play games before his online classes started.
My
mother sat in the living room, the television murmuring a morning talk show. The house fell into its rhythm. And in the dark of my bedroom, the chemical process of my departure continued, entirely uninterrupted. By Tuesday morning, the silence in my room had acquired a weight. I spent most of Monday night sitting on the headboard of my bed, staring down at myself. It was a bizarre, clinical sort of torture. I watched as the gravity of my position caused the blood to pool in the lower parts of my body, turning my back and thighs a deep, mottled purple. My skin had lost all its translucent youthfulness, turning a dull, yellowish green. But it was Tuesday when the first real physical change occurred. The weather had turned unseasonably warm. The meteorologist's prediction of heavy rain had defaulted into a humid, stagnant heat wave. Our house didn't have central air conditioning. We relied on a window unit in the living room and individual fans in the bedrooms. My fan was off. My window was shut tight. The air in my room became hot,
damp.
heavy. I noticed the fly first. It was a large, metallic green blowfly. It had slipped in through some tiny crack in the window screen, drawn by a scent that humans couldn't yet register. It buzzed lazily through the dark, its wings making a dry, paper-thin sound in the quiet. I watched, horrified, as it landed on my parted, swollen lips. No, I whispered. I reached out to swat it away, but my spectral hand passed right through the insect. It didn't even register my presence. It crawled over my cheek, its tiny legs twitching, before finding its way to the corner of my half-open, clouded eye. I screamed. It was a sound that had no vibration, no vocal cords, no air to
Carry it.
It was just a silent spasm of horror that shook my soul. I curled up on the floor in the corner of the room, my back pressed against the baseboards, my hands over my ears. At 4 p.m. on Tuesday, my mother came home from her shift at the dental clinic. The moment she stepped through the front door, she stopped. I was floating near the ceiling of the living room, watching her. She sniffed the air, her brow furrowing. David, she called out. There was no response. My father wasn't home yet. She walked into the kitchen, checking the trash can. It was half empty.
She
opened the refrigerator, checking for spoiled milk or leftovers that had gone
bad.
Finding nothing, she walked down the hallway toward the bedrooms. The smell was stronger here. It was a faint, sweetish, slightly chemical odor, like old cabbage mixed with cheap perfume. She stopped outside my door. Evie, she said, her voice dropping into that familiar, Warning register. This has gone on long enough. It's been 2 days. Your father and I are sick of your little strike. She knocked harder this time. The door rattled against the latch. Evie, answer me. Nothing. I know you're in there. Cole saw your light on last night. That was a lie. My light had been off since she flicked it off on Sunday night. But they always lied to make their points sound more authoritative. If you don't open this door by the time your father gets home, we are taking the door off its hinges, she threatened. Do you hear me? I am not living in a house with a teenager who thinks she can lock her parents out of their own property. She waited. She pressed her ear to the wood. Inside, the only sound was the faint, dry buzzing of 3 more blowflies that had found their way into the room. My mother let out a sharp, disgusted breath. You are disgusting, she muttered. Just like your aunt. Drama, drama, drama. Enjoy your little pity party. Don't expect any dinner. She turned on her heel and walked away. By Wednesday morning, the smell was no longer a subtle hint. It was an active, aggressive presence in the house. It had crept through the gaps under my door. It had seeped into the drywall. It had found its way into the ventilation system, carried by the rising heat of the afternoon. Cole was the first to complain. He came out of his room at noon, gagging, his shirt pulled up over his nose.
Mom.
What is that smell? He yelled. Did a rat die in the walls again? My mother was in the kitchen, trying to spray Lysol into the air. Her face was pale, her nose wrinkled in disgust. I don't know. I checked the crawl space.
I don't see anything.
Maybe something crawled under the porch. It's coming from Evie's room, Cole said, pointing a finger down the hall. Seriously, it smells like hot garbage right outside her door. Is she cooking something in there? Did she leave old food under her bed to spite us? My mother froze. Her hand, holding the aerosol can, trembled slightly. She wouldn't, she whispered, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She walked down the hallway, Cole trailing a few feet behind her, still holding his shirt over his face. The air near my door was thick. It felt heavy, almost oily. The sweet, putrid scent of decomposition was unmistakable to anyone who had ever encountered death, but to them living in their bubble of stubborn denial, it was just spoiled food or a dead animal. Evie, my mother yelled, her voice cracking with a sudden, sharp edge of panic that she tried to mask as anger. Open this door, right now. She pounded on the wood with her fist. The sound echoed through the hollow
House.
Evie, this isn't funny. What did you do in there? Did you dump something? Maybe she's not in there, Cole suggested, his voice sounding small through his
shirt.
Maybe she snuck out the window. With her window locked from the inside? On the second floor? My mother shook her head. Her face was flushed, a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead.
No.
She's in there. She's doing this on purpose. Mom, seriously, I'm going to throw up, Cole gagged, taking 3 steps back. It's so bad. Make her open it. My mother reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small, silver ring of
keys.
Our house was old, and the bedroom doors used simple privacy locks that could be opened with a small, flathead screwdriver or the emergency key that sat on top of the doorframe. She had forgotten about the key until now, or perhaps she had avoided using it because using it meant admitting that Evie had pushed her to her limit. She selected the flat, brass pin key. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped it once. Stupid, stupid girl, she muttered, kneeling to pick it up. I floated right beside her, my face inches from hers. I wanted to see her expression. I wanted to see the exact moment the realization shattered her. Fragile, manicured reality. She inserted the key into the small hole in the center of the doorknob. There
was a faint click.
She grabbed the knob. It turned. Evie, I swear to God if you. She pushed the door open. The heat hit her first. A wave of stagnant, 90-degree air that carried the full, concentrated force of 3 days of decay. It was like a physical blow. My mother didn't even have time to scream. She immediately doubled over, clutching her stomach, and dry-heaved onto the hallway carpet. Cole, standing behind her, took one look into the room and let out a high-pitched, terrified yelp. He scrambled backward, slipping on his own socks, falling hard onto his rear. What is that? He shrieked, his voice cracking into a prepubescent register. Mom, what is that on her bed? My mother, gasping for breath, her eyes streaming with tears from the stench, forced herself to look up. The blinds were still drawn, but the light from the hallway illuminated the bed. The girl lying there was bloated. Her skin was a terrifying, mottled shade of dark green and black. Her tongue, swollen and dry, protruded from her mouth like
a piece of spoiled meat.
her eyes, half open, were clouded over with a milky, white film. A swarm of flies broke from the bed, disturbed by the sudden draft, buzzing angrily around my mother's head. On the floor, the phone screen was dark, its battery long dead. "Evie," my mother whispered. It wasn't a yell. It wasn't an angry demand. It was a tiny, fragile sound like glass cracking underfoot. She crawled forward on her hands and knees, ignoring the vomit on the carpet, ignoring the smell that was burning her throat. She reached out a trembling hand and touched my foot. It was stiff, cold, like a piece of firewood left out in the frost. "Evie." She shook my ankle. The whole body moved as one rigid unit, a grotesque doll. "No," my mother whispered. She pulled her hand back as if she had touched hot
Iron. No, no, no.
"Evie, get up. Evie, stop it.
Stop playing.
David. David, come here." But David wasn't home. There was only Cole, who was now hyperventilating in the hallway, his hands covering his face, sobbing hysterically. "Mom, is she dead? Is she dead? Did I do that? Mom, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to play a prank."
Mom.
My mother didn't answer him. She stood up, her movements jerky and robotic, and ran to the bathroom. I followed her. She threw up into the toilet, her body racking with violent spasms. When she was finished, she leaned against the cool tile wall, her face gray, her eyes wide and vacant. "She's faking," she whispered to the empty room.
She's very sick.
"We need an ambulance." But even she didn't believe the lie anymore. The smell was too loud. The flies were too real. The flashing red and blue lights of the emergency vehicles cast long, rhythmic shadows across the walls of our living room. The quiet neighborhood had been thoroughly disrupted. Neighbors stood on their lawns in their bathrobes, whispering, pointing their phones at our house as two police cruisers and a coroner's van pulled up to the curb. I sat on the roof of the porch, watching them. The air out here was cool and
clean.
I didn't want to go back inside. The smell of my own decay was starting to make even my soul feel heavy. Inside, the house was a circus of professional efficiency. 2 paramedics had gone up the stairs with a gurney, but they had come down, empty-handed 5 minutes later. There was no rush. There was no need for chest compressions or oxygen masks. A detective in a dark gray suit, a man named Miller with tired eyes and a smelling salt stick tucked into his breast pocket, was sitting at our dining table. My mother and father sat opposite him. My father had arrived home 30 minutes ago, his face a mask of absolute, paralyzing shock. He hadn't said a word. He just sat there, his hands clamped between his knees, staring at the polished wood of the table. My mother was sobbing, her head buried in her arms. "Mrs. Vance," Detective Miller said, his voice quiet, almost gentle, but carrying a cold, professional edge. "I need you to try and talk to me.
The
paramedics estimate your daughter has been deceased for approximately 60 to 72 hours. Can you tell me when you last saw her alive?" My mother sniffed, her shoulders shaking. Sunday afternoon. She was having dinner. She got upset with her brother and went to her room." "Upset about what?" A joke," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. "Just a silly, sibling joke. Cole put some peanut butter on her plate." Detective Miller's pen stopped moving. He looked up, his eyes narrowing.
Slightly.
"Peanut butter? Was Evie allergic?" "Yes." My father spoke up for the first time. His voice was hollow, like he was speaking from the bottom of a well. "She had a severe allergy. Anaphylactic. And Cole knew this. He's just a boy." My mother defended fiercely, her head snapping up, her eyes red and wild. "He's 15. He didn't understand. He thought she was just exaggerating. We all thought she was exaggerating. She always made such a big deal out of everything." Detective Miller didn't write that down. He just stared at her. The silence in the room became very heavy, very cold. "Mrs. Vance," Miller said slowly, "your daughter died of what appears to be severe anaphylactic shock. Her throat was almost entirely closed. She had hives, over 80% of her body. And you're telling me she's been in that room since Sunday afternoon?" "She locked the door," my mother cried. "She wouldn't answer me. I knocked. I told her to come out. I thought she was just giving me the silent treatment. She's done it before." "For 3 days?" Miller asked. "Your daughter didn't come out for 3 days. She didn't use the bathroom. She didn't get water. Her alarm was blaring this morning, and you didn't think to check on her?
I.
My mother's voice failed her. She looked at her husband for help. But David was looking at the floor, his face completely blank. We're going to need to take Cole's phone, Miller said, standing up.
And
Evie's. We need to establish a timeline. Why? My mother gasped, panic rising in her voice. It was an accident.
it was.
Just a stupid prank. You can't blame Cole. He's a child. He loves his sister. We need to conduct a thorough investigation, Mrs. Vance, Miller said, his tone no longer gentle. A young girl is dead in her bedroom while 3 healthy adults lived normal lives 10 feet away. We have to understand how that happens. He walked down the hall toward Cole's room. I followed him. Cole was sitting on his bed, his knees pulled up to his chest, his face pale and
Tear-stained.
he looked incredibly small. His expensive gaming headset was dangling from his desk, the blue light blinking uselessly. Cole, Miller said, stepping into the room. I need your phone, buddy. Am I going to jail? Cole sobbed. I didn't mean to kill her.
I swear.
I just wanted to see her face when she ate it. I didn't think she would actually die. Just give me the phone, Cole, Miller said, extending his hand. Cole reached onto his nightstand and handed over the device. I watched as Miller bagged it in a clear plastic sleeve. I knew what was on that
Phone.
I knew the texts he had sent to his friend, laughing about how I was playing dead for attention. I knew the internet search history where he had probably looked up what happens if an allergic person eats peanut butter before he did it, just to see if it would make a cool video. They were going to find all of it. And for the first time since I died, I felt a tiny cold spark of something that felt like peace. 2 weeks passed. My body was gone, taken by the coroner and eventually buried in a quiet, gray cemetery on the edge of town. The funeral had been a small, miserable affair. Only my parents and Cole attended. None of my school friends came. My mother had refused to put an obituary in the paper, trying to keep the details of my death as quiet as possible. But you can't keep a secret like that in a small town. The police had leaked the details of the investigation to the local press. The headline in the county ledger had been brutal. Teenager dies of allergic reaction in family home while parents ignore her for 3 days. The online comments were a bloodbath. Monsters. How do you not smell a decomposing body in your own house?
Lock
them all up, especially the brother. The community that my mother had spent her whole life trying to impress turned its back on her overnight. Neighbors stopped speaking to them. The dental clinic where she worked relieved her of her duties to avoid the negative publicity. My father was put on administrative leave from his accounting firm. The house became a tomb. The smell of decomposition had been chemically removed by a restoration crew, but the scent of bleach and ozone they left behind was almost worse. It smelled like a hospital, like a sterile, dead place. I still wandered the halls. I couldn't leave. I was tied to the place where my life had been cut short, a silent observer of their slow, agonizing ruin. One evening, my parents were in the kitchen. They didn't cook anymore. The stove was cold. There were only paper plates on the table, covered in stale, store-bought bread and cold cuts. We have to move, my mother said. Her hair was greasy, pulled back into a messy
bun.
She had lost 10 pounds, and her eyes were sunken, surrounded by deep, dark circles. We can't stay here, David. Every time I walk past her door, I can't do it. David didn't look at her. He was staring at his paper plate. We can't sell this house, Sarah, he said, his voice dead. Who's going to buy a house where a kid rotted for 3 days? We'd have to disclose it. The price would be pennies. We'd lose everything. I don't care about the money, she shrieked, her voice cracking. I can't breathe in here. I feel like she's watching me. Every time I turn around, I think I see her standing in the hallway. Maybe you should have thought about that before, David said. My mother froze. What is that supposed to mean? You're the one who told me to ignore her, David said, his voice rising. A sudden, ugly venom leaking through his flat exterior. You said she was dramatic. You said she was faking it. You're her mother. Why didn't you open the
Door?
Oh, so now it's my fault? She screamed, standing up, her chair scraping violently against the linoleum. Where were you, David? You were sitting right next to me on the couch. You watched the news. You didn't care either. You never cared about her. You just wanted a quiet house so you could watch your TV. I trusted you, he yelled back, slamming his fist onto the table. I trusted my wife to know if our daughter was dying. And what about Cole? You spoiled him. You let him get away with everything. He's a murderer, Sarah.
Our son is a
Murderer because you never taught him what a consequence was. In the hallway, Cole was standing in the dark, listening. He had his arms wrapped around his stomach, his thumb tucked into his mouth. A habit he hadn't had since he was 5 years old. He looked hollowed out like a shell that had been washed clean by a harsh tide. His trial was set for next month. The prosecutor was pushing for involuntary manslaughter. His friends had blocked him on every social media platform.
his
Gaming accounts had been banned after people found his username and flooded his lobbies with abuse. He had nothing left. I floated over to him, looking down at his trembling shoulders. It was just a prank, Cole, I whispered in his ear. He shivered, his eyes darting around the dark hallway, his breathing shallow and terrified. He couldn't hear me, not really, but he could feel the cold draft that followed me wherever I went. He ran back to his room, slamming the door. A month later, the house was empty. My father had moved out, taking a small apartment near his office. The divorce papers were already sitting on the kitchen counter, their white pages gathering dust under the kitchen light. Cole had been sent to a juvenile detention facility for 18 months.
It
Wasn't a long sentence, but it was enough to ensure he would never have a normal life. His name was Googleable now. His face was public. He was a pariah. My mother was the only one left in the house. She had stopped turning on the lights. She lived in a perpetual, gray twilight, wandering from room to room like a ghost herself. She didn't clean. She didn't wash her clothes. She just sat on the sofa, staring at the blank television screen, her thumbs swiping mindlessly on her phone, looking at old photos of me from when I was a baby, back when she still smiled at me. I walked into my old bedroom. The restoration crew had stripped the wallpaper. The mattress was gone, replaced by bare, unfinished floorboards. The room was empty, smelling of drywall dust and fresh paint, but they hadn't touched the ceiling. I floated up, closer to the water stain. It was still there, shaped vaguely like a butterfly, its wings spread wide against the plaster. I remembered all those nights I had stared at it, crying silently while my family laughed in the next room. I had wanted so badly to escape, to fly away from this house, from their indifference, from the small, daily cruelties that had chipped away at my soul until there was nothing left but dust. I reached out and touched the butterfly. For the first time, my hand didn't pass through. My fingers sank into the plaster, feeling the rough, dry texture of the stain. A soft, golden light began to bleed from the edges of the wings. It wasn't a bright, blinding flash. It was a gentle, warm glow, like the sun, rising over a quiet hill after a long, freezing night. The heavy, hollow draft in my chest began to fill. Not with anger, not with regret, but with a deep, quiet stillness. I looked down at the room one last time. The door was open. The hallway was empty. The house was quiet. They would never forget me. Every time they closed their eyes, they would smell the sweet, heavy scent of my departure. Every time they looked at a peanut, they would see my purple lips. Every time they laughed, the sound would turn to ash in their mouths. They had wanted me to be their punchline. Instead, I had become their ghost. I smiled, a real, genuine smile that didn't hurt, that didn't stretch my skin, that didn't feel like wet cement. I turned back to the butterfly, stepped into the light, and let the house go dark forever.